Today's theme is rebuild is here. Now, look, here's some things that we can't speak on. Is it going to work? Nobody knows. Are they going to pick the right players? Nobody knows. Is the franchise in 2 years, 1 year, 6 months, or tomorrow going to change their mind? Nobody knows. You can only speak on today and where the direction is. Now, again, there might be some just tuning in or some that have been tuning in going, we've been doing rebuilding for 40 years. No, we haven't.
Now, why do you say that?
Because I don't think at any point in Kings history has there been an actual directed rebuild. And here's how I define a rebuild. A rebuild is trading off your highest contracts, which generally are your best players, for nothing but youth, either youth, talented youth, immediate cap relief. So, for example, if they were to trade $45 million Zach LaVine, who's got 2 years left on his deal, for $45 million bleh, who expires this year. That's cap relief. And or future draft assets. Now, we've seen, especially, let's say, 2007, 8 to 2000, call it 17. Let's just look at that stretch, because I think that would be the stretch most associated with a possible rebuild. I don't think there was ever a plan to rebuild. I look back at their moves, and I just don't see it. I think they were just terrible. And then I think they got picks, and they made the picks, and then they continued to be terrible because they had terrible picks. I think they were trying to win. I think Maloofs wanted to win. I think there's no Vivek Ranadive, I promise you, did not come in. In fact, when Vivek took over in 2013, I know this for a fact, you know this for a fact, the remit, the absolute, and this wasn't just Vivek, this was Chris Granger, this was the whole organization. Playoffs by the Open of Golden One Center in 2016. That is not a guess. That is actually what happened. Spoiler alert, that didn't happen, but that's what happens when you draft Ben McLemore and Stauskas and on and on and on.
I guess my pushback would be if somewhere along the line of when they had Evans and Cousins in that next few years of drafting, which they did not do very well, if they landed one in there and it was Kawhi, Giannis, it doesn't matter. The player is when they go. Would that then, because that player was successful with those other two or some version of that, would that have felt like it was the rebuild because they got the pick right?
I think that's the closest it would have.
Yeah.
And I'll go.
And how about trading DeMarcus? Would that be the rebuild?
Go a step further. I was going to say, the DeMarcus trade, which
got a young player and picks.
The DeMarcus trade, they got Buddy Hield and they got some picks. And by the way, and again, just like I don't want to tie Luka trade to Cooper Flagg, but we can go a step further. As a direct result of the Cousins trade, that put them in the position to draft De'Aaron Fox. Again, I don't want to tie those together other than mentioning it because it took a lot of things. It took, remember, they had that pick encumbered. It was the Markelle Fultz, Jason Tatum swap that Boston had. That used to be a Kings pick. And then also that was from the Jason Thompson stuff, I believe, that they got from Philly. I could be tying that together wrong. No, I think that is right. And then on top of that, remember, Danny Ainge traded number one down to number 3. Philly took Markelle Fultz, and that's an example of a rebuilding team. And Sam Hinkie had the number 1 pick in the draft. How different do those two teams look if Philly drafted Jason Tatum and Boston drafted Markelle Fultz, who, by the way, was the clear-cut number 1 pick in that draft? That wasn't an accident. And it took Phoenix drafting Josh Jackson, who would have been probably a Sacramento King had Phoenix taken De'Aaron Fox, which they obviously should have, on top of all of that. I think had those things happened and they decided to stay in that direction, I think that would be the closest we could classify the Kings in doing a rebuild. But when you tie in terrible draft picks with terrible moves and trading DeMarcus and the firing of Michael Malone and all the things that go together, you now have a wartime consigliere general manager who did this exact same thing in New York that's coming in here, who is literally on record with their highest paid player saying, as we played the audio earlier, that that's too much money and he ain't affecting winning. Now, there was a lot of context there. He was very kind to Zach LaVine about it, but that's what he said. Also, look at this roster, too. I think it's also when you're talking about building culture, right? Jason, who on this roster has a proven record of winning at a high level?
Probably. Well, Russ.
Yep.
DeRozan has. I mean, in Toronto, they won a lot.
They did win a lot in Toronto.
Yeah, it's getting pretty slim.
There aren't any proven winners really on this roster, other than I would say 1.5, because DeRozan's had more. No, I'm not blaming him, but he's had more losing years than winning years. Russ is the closest. Yeah. Russ is in that, like we've talked about. Russ is in that Jrue Holiday mode, but he just doesn't have the Trailblazer roster. So when you're going through a true rebuild, as the Kings are setting off to do, we think, you have to find success in non-traditional ways. And that doesn't mean necessarily moral victories. You know how years ago, and I'm just having fun here, don't send me any letters, the term alternative facts was coined. We have to start looking at things like alternative wins. Mm-hmm. Okay, what am I talking about as the entire fan base rolls their eyes? Are we developing our youth? These, in my opinion, are the things the Kings should be graded on this year and next year. Are we developing the youth? Are we playing them enough, and are we seeing growth and development amongst our younger players, our future pieces? Are we gathering draft picks and assets? You know, the Oklahoma City Thunder, if the season ended right now, still have a top 10 pick in the draft. They continued to add and add and add draft picks and those young assets. We're going to have to get used to, again, watching college ball. We're going to have to watch college ball, do our own, imagine what this guy, or this guy would look at. You're also going to have to say goodbye to some players that you like. There's going to be some tough decisions made if this thing goes right. I like Zach LaVine. I think he's a hell of a player. You're not going to like on the surface the trade they get for Zach LaVine if they trade Zach LaVine, almost certainly. You ain't getting back a Zach LaVine-type talent for Zach LaVine. You're getting back probably minimal draft capital and some old broken-down contracts that fit the bill. But also Domantas Sabonis. I believe he very likely, almost probably will be moved over the next year or two. I love Domantas Sabonis. I love the Domantas Sabonis chant. I think he's a hell of a player, and more importantly, I think he's a hell of a teammate, and I think he rides for Sacramento. I think Domas is going. Yeah. We're going to have to understand and look for the signs between a dedicated and directed rebuild and just being bad. And this team is, if they do it right, that's if they do it right, Jason. Right. They're going to get almost certainly a lot worse before they get better. And we just have to look for those signs like they've seen in Portland, like they've seen in Detroit, like they saw in San Antonio, like they saw in Oklahoma City. You're just going to have to start looking for the signs of gathering those young guys, gathering those assets, and watching that fruit build. I don't know if Scott Perry can pull it off. I don't know if they're going to stay disciplined. I can't speak to the future, and I'm not here, and I know you're not, to say, hey, guys, happy day. We're rebuilding, and we're going to win a championship. What I can say with relative confidence is that the philosophy of the franchise, including Vivek Ranadive, because I know a lot of people are asking that. He's fully aware. Mm-hmm. They're all in unison. Let's see how it works. We'll take a break. When we come back, we'll switch to football.